Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Purely Flowing podcast. You can see that we are live today. This is only the second time we've done it live, so bear with us. I hope it's going to go well. I've got my guest here, Tobi. I'll first do a little intro. This is the Purely Flowing podcast, and the inspiration came from Pure Flow State, which is my brand, and we work with we specialize in sustainable brand strategy for purpose-led businesses. And the name Flow State, Pure Flow State, came from the concept of flow state, which was coined by an Hungarian-American psychologist named Michal Csikszentmihalyi to describe a moment where you are so engrossed in what you're doing that you enter into a timeless bliss. And wouldn't that be amazing if we could all find some flow in our businesses and our lives? So these sessions are all about chatting to friends and fellow entrepreneurs about their experience of flow state and how it's influenced them, how it's helped them, and if they've ever been out of flow, how they've got themselves back into flow. So it's an inspiring journey to give you a little bit of insight into what goes on behind the scenes in entrepreneurship and give you some inspiration for finding some flow in your own life. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Tobi. He is the co-founder of WindowshopAI, and they are building an ecosystem of entrepreneurs and software developers so that they can receive funding through a mobile app and find work before it gets put out to the wider public. Is that right? Explain to me a little bit about what it is that you do.
Thank you very much, Ada. I absolutely enjoy your podcast. I think it's very enlightening and inspiring.
Oh, thanks for joining me today. And I'd love to hear more about, obviously, your flow and your experience of flow, but also about, your business. So tell us a little bit about that.
About our business, we build a Windows AI. It helps entrepreneurs to receive funding opportunities notification. So it prioritizes you for success.
Oh, okay. So entrepreneurs subscribe, and then they'll receive a notification when relevant funding is available. Is that right?
Yes, compared to having to wait when it gets to public LinkedIn, where about 5,000 people would have applied. So this gets you the notification as soon as it gets.
Okay, well that sounds really positive. And at what stage are you at with your business right now? Is it ready to launch? Is it pre-launch? Is it already up and running?
We are ready to launch. We are in the early stage. So we are currently talking to about 500 entrepreneurs who are interested in trying it out.
And what's the criteria to be able to join?
Being an entrepreneur and knowing the kind of funding that you want, if it's grants, fellowships, VC, so you can just select the options.
Oh, okay, so it works for grant funding as well. It's not necessarily investment through VC or anything like that. Okay, well, that's interesting to know. And also it's to connect you with job opportunities as well, is that right?
Yes, for software developers.
Yeah.
Because I've got a 10 years background in software.
Okay.
So we are using our network of entrepreneurs to connect them to software developers. So for people who want to build their MVPs, they can instantly send that message and then get broadcasted to our network of software developers.
Yeah.
We can chat them and respond to apply their interest.
Yeah, okay, that sounds like a brilliant option for both entrepreneurs and software developers, because early startups haven't got a lot of money. They're looking for someone to help them out, get an MVP, get it to market, and then perhaps apply for funding after that. So it's a kind of one-stop shop for anybody who's setting up a business. I love that concept. So obviously you're flowing with WindowshopAI at the moment. So tell me a little bit about the story that has got you to there. Was there a time when you were out of flow or wondering what to do with your life?
I think my period out of flow started when I realized there's a state of flow.
Yeah, that's good, yeah.
And what helped me do that is when I found art.
Mm-hmm.
When I started reading poetry.
Yes.
And I read my first poetry in a long time.
Yeah.
It's called What is a Poem?
Yeah.
From a very popular website.
Mm-hmm.
Poetry Education, Poetry Foundation.
Yeah. Okay.
And since then, I was like, wow, this is so beautiful.
Yeah.
That sparked my curiosity. I started learning and reading more.
Yeah.
And I started writing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's at the point of then writing that I started writing down my thoughts. Things started getting clearer. It's like moving at a faster speed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So poetry is something that, I mean, what is poetry? It can be anything really, can't it? You know, poetry in motion, it can be the written word, spoken word. There's many sides to poetry, like any art, really. So what specific parts of poetry are you drawn to?
I'm drawn to soulful poetry,
Mm-hmm.
things that lead to positivity, encouragement.
Yeah.
And I also enjoy abstract.
Mm-hmm. So tell us, can you give us an example of the type of poetry that you do? Is it spoken word mostly?
I do both.
Yeah.
I write most of the time.
Yeah.
And then I also do spoken word.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I also enjoy that because it gives the chance to vocalize.
Yeah.
Which is very powerful.
Yeah. So what type of things were you struggling with, do you think, that led you into wanting to find an outlet and express yourself in a different way through art?
So I've got a successful career in software development for 10 years. But at that time, 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking for what more. And I decided to try out art.
Yeah.
And that's when I got in contact with poetry.
Mm-hmm.
And that gave me a new insight, a new discovery to self.
Yeah.
Not just to professionalism and career, but how one can channel from the inner core into everything that we do.
Yeah.
Both at work, friends, and family.
Yeah, and it's quite different, the concept of art and poetry and self-expression, to what you do as a day job, because software development is very precise. It's, you know, it has to be a certain way, otherwise it won't work. So it's quite rigid. Software developers, I apologize if you're going to tell me it's one of the most creative things that you can do. The output, I think, is creative afterwards, but the actual kind of like behind the scenes, back end, nitty gritty is very regimented, isn't it? Because it's, you know, one number out of place and everything is not going to work.
Yeah.
So it's a very stark contrast with this kind of seeking to express yourself freely through art. And was that something that you felt in your career, that you were perhaps held back a little bit, or you had a lot of emotions running through that you weren't able to express with your job? Is that the case?
That it is. That is the case. Software development requires preciseness. It has to be, you're looking for the most effective way to get this code to work.
Yeah.
But with art, there is really no right way. It's just about you expressing the way you feel as at that time. And it's quite important to be genuine about the process and just let yourself flow. If you're writing, write your current moment, write the way you feel. If you're painting, just start somewhere. And I realized that going through those sessions, it helps me with work, because now I get clarity. I'm able to visualize my thoughts through the words that I already written around.
Yeah, I can see that. And it's It's such a beautiful way of expressing yourself through words, isn't it? And finding the right word for something, or just experimenting with things, which I guess there is a lot of experimentation in software development because you're trying things all the time to improve them, as you say. But there's a lot more riding on that than with art, where it doesn't really matter what the outcome is. There's no right or wrong with it, is there? It just is. I'm curious about what drew you to words versus painting or another type of art. Was it just an attraction that you instantly felt towards it? Was it something that you enjoyed doing when you were growing up, for example?
Yes. So I can remember when I was around 12, 13, 14.
Yeah.
I would write a fiction storybook and duplicate it by writing.
Yeah.
And try to sell it to my brothers.
Yeah.
We're like, what is this?
They were
and then they're still going to pay something for it just to encourage me. And when I then found poetry, it was like something that connected between the past and the present.
Yeah.
So I found it a movement. Later on, I enjoyed visual arts.
Yeah.
And I see visual art as a different form of expression. It has its own way of enticing, of magnetizing.
I think it's perhaps it feels for somebody who has not done a lot of art in any respect, and it perhaps feels a bit more accessible to use, pencils, pens, paint, crayons, and just kind of experiment with things, because that's what we're taught when we're young. Like, do some colouring, or, here, have some colours and do something with them. Here's a piece of paper. Whereas actually putting words down, it feels like more of a task that, you have to think about a little bit more. So tell me, when you are writing, would you say that gets you into a flow state where you could just do it for ages and time just slips away, and you're just there focused on your words and that's it? Yes.
A lot of times the biggest challenge is to start. But once you can write the first word and allow yourself to make the first mistake and connect that to the next line, and it starts to make sense. A lot of times you realize the title of the piece of art at the end.
Yeah, I think that happens with writers as well when they're writing stories and books and things like that. There might be a working title, or even with film, there's a working title, and then as the story evolves, and a lot of the time it depends on the characters, doesn't it? So whatever characters come into a story, they kind of create the book, and whatever it is, they grow into their own personalities, and then the story evolves in that way. But with poetry, I would say it's probably more you and the page, and there's no external characters, or maybe there are. Do you feel like there are characters coming into your poems, or is it more about you?
Well, more about me. It's interesting because there is always a source of something. There is always the start of the start of the start of the start of the start. And sometimes there is an influence of what you recently read that showcases in your new type of writing. However, the entire format and voice still remains yours.
Yeah, and you do perform your poetry. So tell us a little bit about how that came along, and would you say it's a similar experience when you're doing that as when you're writing it, or does it feel different? Is it a state of flow for you performing it as well? Because that takes a lot, doesn't it? Because it's such a personal thing to then stand on stage and perform in front of many people. That it takes a lot. It's brave. So tell me about the story behind that and how that came to be.
So I got invited by Empower Poetry Community. That's one of the iconic communities in Birmingham.
Yeah.
And I said yes. And I went to perform. I was like, which of these am I going to choose from? What am I going to say?
Yeah.
How might it look like? So I started practicing. I think practice is key.
Okay.
Yes, practice is key. Plus the confidence, although I've been speaking in front of people before now. So the experience of confidence plus the practice of what you have passion on, it positioned me in a place where, while standing up to the podium and the heart is beating, I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, the adrenaline.
I'm like, I'm going to do this for the heartbeat.
Oh, I love that. It's that feeling that you get. It just makes you feel so good. Yeah, it's that mixture, isn't it? And they say that about a flow state as well. There has to be some element of challenge to it. So if it was just standing up there and, saying a few words and it didn't feel a bit scary, you probably wouldn't get the same experience out of it, and perhaps it wouldn't even be flow either. So tell me how that has influenced in what you do in your business and in your career. Has that been something that's opened you up to new opportunities, as in just being able to think about new opportunities by this way of self-expression?
Because poetry is writing, when we are going into the business room, we're able to articulate our plans better. It gives clarity, because now, how do I explain my ideas to someone who I'm meeting for the first time?
Yeah.
Oftentimes, you would need to refine that story.
Yes, many times. Yeah.
So being able to write already, it gives you that energy.
You're right. Yeah.
Say, how fast, how smooth, how efficient can I do this, so that the time it takes me to get my story right, it can go from 2 years to 2 months.
Yeah. Wow.
And of course, you keep iterating.
You keep iterating and iterating. Yeah. And it for me, in my work, I know that with brands, it's the same thing. Like, they know inside what it is that they do, but they find it quite difficult to express what it is that they do, so that people can understand it, and they just get it straight away. And I had a conversation earlier today with someone, and that's a typical conversation in a social environment with other entrepreneurs is, so what do you do? What's your business? And I listened to somebody recount what it is that they do, and when I walked away, I had absolutely no idea of what it was that they did, even though it was, she had a very detailed explanation of it. I still wasn't sure at the end of it. And when I work with clients, then that's something that we work on very, very deeply, to make sure that they can express what it is that they do, so that people can understand it in a really easy, quick manner, that there's no jargon with, and it's, you have to understand your audience, don't you, and make sure that you express yourself very, very clearly, because we're all selling at the end of the day. We have business, we need to sell, so we need to be able to express what it is that we do. And I imagine that anybody that came to just like doing more writing might find it easier to do that, to find the right words, like you say, because it's like a muscle, isn't it, with words? Like you need to keep flexing it, and not putting it into ChatGPT and seeing what that spits out, as many people are doing. So what would your advice be to people to, try and find their flow? And especially if they've been out of flow, would you kind of encourage them to try poetry, for example?
Absolutely. Try poetry. Poetry is great. And it's very easy to start.
Yeah.
You just need a pen and a paper. And start with the first word.
Yeah.
You can start with the first word and continue it for the next 1 minute. Even if it is 4 lines, that is great. Then give yourself a day or two, come back, write another 4 lines.
And would you recommend writing about emotions, or would you recommend more like, finding something to write about, say, I don't know, what you can see out of your window, or, a bird that come and perches on your windowsill while you're looking out? What would you suggest as an easier option, or is it entirely personal?
While it's personal, it can be easier to start with what you can see at the moment. Because it all connects. The bird that I mentioned also connects to the table that the feet is on. And then you start drawing it to the coffee in the mug and how you're sipping gently, and down to the white smoke of the coffee. And you can connect it to the clouds in the sky, to the blue and the pink.
So looking for connections with what it is that you see, and just being more conscious about what we see. I think that is good advice for anyone at any time, isn't it? Because we're so kind of like tunnel vision, head down, getting on with our work. We don't look up and notice and pause for a moment, do we? And see what's around us, and just take in our surroundings. There's beauty in everything, isn't there? There is, you could find one element of beauty no matter where you are, in whichever room, whichever environment. You could, if you looked hard enough, you could find one thing that is of beauty amongst whatever it is surrounding that. That's really good advice. I like that. And I'm really keen to read some of your stuff now. So where can we find you?
I'm on tobiakinpelu.com.
Okay, you've got your own website. And that's where all your poetry is?
Yes.
Oh, amazing.
Most.
Yeah. Okay, well, I sense a performance. Is there anything you'd like to leave us with today?
I want to say thank you to Adele, thank you to Flow State. I think the name of the brand, it unlocks the experience and the expectation. And that existing in our world is a unique proposition.
Yeah.
So thank you, Adele.
Thank you. I really enjoyed our chat. Thanks, Toby. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back next week with more conversations in Flow.